New York State budget, one of the latest in recent years. How is that impacting the rest of the legislative session?
Hear from an Assembly Republican on his reaction to that budget and what the minority party will be focusing on for the rest of session.
Hello and welcome to Empire State Weekly. I'm John Gray.
And I'm Jamie DeLine. We're continuing to follow the developments after the budget for fiscal year 2026 was signed over a month late.
Now, at this point, there are 3 weeks left in the legislative session. Many lawmakers scrambling now, trying to get their legislation passed before the last day of the session on June 17th.
Immigration advocates are pushing for the New York for All Act. The bill would prohibit local law enforcement from asking about a person's citizenship or immigration status and then sharing that information with Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. One supporter of the bill calling on lawmakers to act this week.
What we need New York to do is stand up for its New Yorkers and all of its residents and say that we are not going to use our local and state resources to do federal work and to leave that to the federal government.
He went on to say the bill has support in both houses and is confident it would pass if voted on.
Prison reform also seeing a big push as advocates say the high-profile death of Robert Brooks in prison, highlighting the need for change. One proposed bill would expand the State Commission of Correction, which oversees local and state correctional facilities and helps make sure that minimum management standards are being met.
It will also require the commissioners to have a background in public health, in behavioral health, in prisoners' rights litigation, and someone who was formerly incarcerated.
This representation is essential if we are going to have a board that has the expertise and perspective to make decisions necessary to meaningfully conduct oversight.
That measure currently has only passed in the state Senate.
Another piece of legislation is a measure that supporters say would fix ticket purchasing for live events. The proposal in the bill would limit ticket scalping by prohibiting people from selling the tickets for profit if the artist opt into the measure.
What happens is scalpers gobble up thousands and thousands and thousands of those tickets and just resell them at a marked up 5 times, 10 times price. So the average fan gets locked out and only rich fans are filling so many thousands of those seats. If you've got a Taylor Swift concert, 40,000 seats, I promise you at least 10,000 of those seats are held aside for platinum credit card company members and other VIPs, friends and family of promoters.
The bill is currently in committee.
Joining us now to give insight on the state budget and the time remaining in this state legislative session, Assemblyman Ed Rod, Republican representing the 19th district. Ed, thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
For those who don't know, 19th is you're on Long Island, right? Nassau County, that area?
Yep, I'm in western Nassau County.
So let's talk. I'll give you the softball pitch over the middle. The state budget, happy with it, not happy with it? You wish it was different. Tell me what you think. Well,
yeah, I mean, when you spend $254 billion, there's going to be a lot of good stuff in there, a lot of stuff people are happy with. You know, a lot of the child care provisions, tax cuts are things that really the Assembly Republican Conference has been pushing for the last few years. So there was a lot of good in the budget, but we still have not put ourselves on a sustainable path forward. It was the largest percentage increase year to year that we've had really since the Great Recession in the late 2000s. And our recurring revenues and our recurring spending don't match up. And I don't think that was a responsible way to go about this budget, particularly if you know, my colleagues in the majority are as fearful as to what the federal government's going to do as they say they are.
You know, for decades, they called it 3 men in a room. Then there was this big push to get away from that. I've talked to state reps recently and said, have they gotten away from that? And they kind of look at me and go, not really. It's still a couple people making all the big decisions. Do you think we have enough transparency of how the soup's being made, or is it still behind closed doors and you guys get it thrown at you like, here, just vote on it?
Yeah. No, we don't have transparency at all. And I would say it's not even just between the parties. Even the rank and file members on the majority sides are really getting briefed on a lot of stuff after the fact. What I think is the biggest problem from a good government standpoint is we start passing budget bills. You know, people just think of the budget as one big thing. Well, it's really 10 separate bills. And we start passing these bills without a full financial plan being provided to the legislature. And that tells you not only what we're spending, but what our out-year gaps are, which is a really important thing. This enacted budget ultimately grew our out-year deficit numbers. So that's really important. It's important to know what debt you're adding, all those types of things. And for the most part, we're voting on these budget bills in the dark with regard to a lot of that information.
The budget was late, pretty late compared to other years, and I had the budget director on, weeks ago, and I said to him, if it seems to me if you got some of the policy bills out of the budget that have nothing to do with a budget, you might be able to get yes votes on things quicker, things like bans on cell phones or prison stuff. Where do you stand on that? Would you like to see budgets be more just about the financial end of it and having to vote separately on those other issues that can sometimes gum things up?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, budget should be about spending. The spending provision should match, the other initiatives in the budget on the spending side. Policy should be done in a standalone way. But I will say there's plenty of blame to go around with regard to that because, you talked about 3 men in a room. Well, also, one of the things that's been a problem for years is there's this way that the chambers are run, that bills that really have enough support to pass don't get to the floor. The majorities say, no, we want to make sure we have 76, a majority votes just in the Democratic conference. And it bottles up a lot of things that I think are common sense, including things like the discovery changes in this budget that I think if they had just been brought to the floor as a standalone bill and everybody got to just vote, they would have passed.
Why do they do that? Do some of them not want to have the vote where they're on record being yay or nay against something, or is it they want some kind of supermajority? Why would they not put things out that might get through?
I think it does maybe protect some members from having to vote on certain things that may be uncomfortable. But again, I think the problem is no matter what letter you have next to your name, we should all have the opportunity to move a bill forward, move it through committee. Obviously, there are things that I'm going to support that majority members don't. And if it gets voted down, fine. But do it in a fair process. I think that's what representative government should be about. Where
do you stand on these refund checks? I know some Republicans have been on the record saying, it's fun giving away money and giving money back. But, what you said, financially, we're not on great footing and maybe it's not the smartest thing. Where do you land on all that?
I mean, look, I'm never going to say no to putting money back in people's pockets. But, you think about in the final budget, it was about $2 billion. We moved a large amount of money out of our reserves to help pay down the unemployment insurance debt that we had to the federal government. I think $2 billion there could have been maybe better spent on something like that and providing relief to small businesses. So, you never say no to giving money back to taxpayers. We certainly think New Yorkers are taxed too much, but it is really a small one-time really gimmick.
We got a couple minutes left, and it strikes me when the budget goes, it takes longer to get the budget done. It shrinks your time after the budget to get other stuff done before everybody wants to head home for the holiday or for the summer and the session kind of ends. I'll throw a couple out. I'm wondering to get your take on whether we might see them this year. Another push for the bigger, better bottle bill. Any chance that's going to go through?
I'm hearing a lot of buzz about that one. I think, there's a number of environmental issues out there. It seems to be clear that each session we end up tackling one of the larger ones. So, you figure between that, EPR, the HEAT Act, that we're probably going to see one of these before we wrap up.
What about aid and dying? They were holding press conferences saying they had enough votes. Does that look like that might happen? They've been pushing for a decade, or are there still enough even Democrats who are like, I'm not ready to, cross that line where we're doing that here in New York State?
Yeah, you know what? That's an interesting one. It passed in the Assembly a few weeks ago. Nobody on our side of the aisle voted for it. We all voted against it, but there was a substantial amount of no votes. There were only 81 yes votes for it in a chamber that has 103 Democrats. So if you kind of try to, game those numbers out in the Senate, there's probably a tight margin there because it does cut across different, not just the politics, but, different backgrounds people are coming from. So that one could get through the Senate and squeak through, or I could see it not quite making it. I don't know exactly what the conversations internally with Leader Stewart Cousins and our conference have been.
Got you. Last question, because we're probably less than 2 minutes now. it's hard to separate the politics from it. You know, I'm sure Governor Hochul, if she was here, would say, I could care less about the polls. I want to do the good government things. But when I saw things like the checks going back to people in the fall, my mind instantly went to some of her poll numbers, which haven't been that strong, you know, especially maybe downstate. And I'm thinking, is some of this trying to shore her up and gets, I don't want to say, it's unfair to say buying votes, but you know what I mean, just maybe shift the view of her from people. What is your take on that?
I think we all commented when this budget was rolled out in January that it felt like an election year budget. There was something for everybody. And like I said earlier, when you spend $254 billion, there's going to be a lot of things that people like in it. I think on our side of the aisle, what we reject is the idea that we could ever spend our way to being a more affordable state.
All right, we'll have to wrap it there. Ed Rod, thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
And if we don't see you, have yourself a good summer. New York lawmakers taking steps to address the needs of businesses and workers in the state. A state paying off the unemployment debt that Ed Rod just mentioned. Hear from the State Business Council on the impact this is going to have. And by the way, if you have a comment or story idea, please tell us about it. You can email us at news@news10.com. We're also on X at WTEN. Welcome back to Empire State Weekly. One of the items added late in the 2026 budget was a measure to pay off the state's federal unemployment insurance debt.
This is a part of several measures the governor is taking to support the state's workforce.
Now, for background on this, the state incurred unemployment debt when it paid out to New York businesses dealing with the economic impacts over the COVID-19 pandemic. At the start of the month, that debt was $5.7 billion.
In addition to taking the step of paying off that debt, the governor also signing measures aimed at increasing benefits for workers, which includes increasing the maximum unemployment benefit from $504 to $869. Joining us now to give additional insight on the impact this will have is Ken Polkowski. He's the Vice President of the Business Council of New York. Ken, thank you so much for joining us.
I'm happy to do it.
So for people that don't know, what is unemployment insurance debt? And I know money was allocated in the state budget, but how is that going to help businesses?
Sure. Well, this is a program, it's a joint federal state program that pays partial wage replacement when people lose their jobs due to no fault of their own. They get laid off, a plant closes, etc. And regular unemployment typically lasts 26 weeks. There can be some extensions, and it's a percentage of the claimant's earnings when they were still working. So during early in the pandemic, it seems so long ago, but March of 2020, New York State issued an order that required businesses to implement a 100% reduction in force, meaning with limited exceptions, companies could not let their employees come to work. So in a matter of like 2 weeks, almost 1.5 million New Yorkers lost their jobs. That cost the state's unemployment system a huge amount of money. And since it is a joint federal and state program, states can get automatic loans from the federal government to keep benefits flowing to eligible claimants. And we did that to the tune of some $10 billion. We've been slowly repaying that $10 billion loan, which is 100% financed from taxes on employers. And this year's and earlier this year, we still owed about $6.2 billion. So in this year's state budget, we appropriated state funding to pay off that federal debt, the remainder of that federal debt, and put a little extra into the state's account so that we could continue to pay benefits, including benefits at an increased rate, without having to go back to federal borrowing. And by the way, as of this spring, 35 other states had borrowed during the pandemic to pay unemployment insurance benefits. And every one of them, except New York, had put some public money into their programs to bring them back to financial stability. to the tune of over $25 billion among the other states. New York was the lone holdout, and now we've joined those 35 other states in recognizing that these layoffs were, largely driven by government policy, not actions of employers. So there's going to be some state financial sharing of the cost of paying down that federal debt.
Now, when do you think New Yorkers could see this change?
Well, New York businesses will see it next year in a couple ways. So generally, businesses pay their unemployment insurance taxes in the first quarter of the year. So when New York businesses get both their state and federal UI tax bills, they'll be lower in January. Claimants will see a potential increase in benefits as of October of this year, because as part of the budget agreement, we also increased the maximum weekly benefit from what was stuck at about $500 a week since pre-pandemic, and that would go up to $869 a week, effective 10/1/25. Now that's the maximum. Not every claimant would get that. It would be based on their prior earnings. But benefits will go up for a share of UI claimants this year.
All right, we'll have to leave it right there. Ken Polkowski, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Anytime.
The race for city mayor seeing new developments. A new poll showing former Governor Andrew Cuomo may not have as strong of a lead as he once did. We'll have the latest numbers. If you have a comment or story idea, let us know. You can email us at news@news10.com. You can also reach out on X, formerly known as Twitter, at WTEN.
Welcome back. New polling showing a big shift in the race for New York City Mayor. Former Governor Andrew Cuomo, current frontrunner, may not be running away with this race anymore.
Henry Rossoff, our reporter with Pix 11 in the city, explaining how the shift for one candidate could impact the election.
Most of the public polling so far in this race for mayor has shown former Governor Andrew Cuomo with at least a 20-point lead, but things appear to be shifting. In our brand new exclusive Pix 11 poll with Emerson College and The Hill, former Governor Andrew Cuomo leads the Democratic primary for mayor by 12 points over Queens Assemblyman Zohran Mamdani. This is in round one of a full ranked choice voting simulation and excludes a small number of undecided voters. Moving through the rest of the field, current comptroller Brad Lander is in third with 11%, and paging over, former comptroller Scott Stringer is at 9%. City Council Speaker Adrian Adams is at 8%. And State Senator Zellner Myrie is at 5%. In ranked choice voting, candidates getting less votes are eliminated, and their votes flow upward to higher candidates. So the top three in our ranked choice voting simulation from this poll is Cuomo at 46%, Mamdani at 32%, and Lander at 22%. Next in the poll, we eliminate Lander. Most of the votes flow to Mamdani, but enough of them also go to Cuomo to put him over the top, winning the race at 54% to Mamdani's 46%. This poll matches some recent internal polling from Mamdani, who was asked Tuesday how he could close the gap on Cuomo.
With 4 weeks left, this is the position we want to be in. It's about to be a single-digit race, and we know that every single New Yorker knows who Andrew Cuomo is. He's a former governor who's the son of a former governor.
We're not just going to save the city, and we're not just going to fix these problems. That's not who we are. We're going to bring this city to a height it's never reached before.
The poll also shows Cuomo would have an easier time in a hypothetical general election that would include likely Republican nominee Curtis Sliwa and Mayor Eric Adams running as an independent. Mamdani would still be a favorite in November, just not by as much as Cuomo. On the issues, New Yorkers say housing is the top concern at 30%, followed by the economy at 22% and crime at 19%. Nearly half of New Yorkers say their family finances are worse off than they were a year ago. And most New Yorkers, 61%, support making it easier to involuntarily remove people from the streets and subways, which state lawmakers just did. We also surveyed Democratic primary voters in the race for New York City comptroller. The city's chief money man is a check on the mayor and is often viewed as a potential future mayor. Manhattan Borough President Mark Levine is well ahead in our poll, with a high number of undecided voters still making up their mind. Something in the neighborhood of 30% of people still don't know who they're voting for in that race. In the newsroom, Henry Rossoff, Pix 11 News.
Stick around. Back with a look at the week ahead in just a bit.
If you have a comment or story idea, let us know. You can email us at news@news10.com. You can also reach out on X, formerly known as Twitter, at WTEN.
And finally, at Empire State Weekly, the Trump administration halting interviews for international students who are seeking visas. State Department says student visa interviews will be paused until it expands its social media vetting process.
This move coming after another Trump administration effort to deport students with international visas from the SUNY system.
We're going to be sure to keep an eye on the impact this move may have on New York schools and bring you, of course, the latest analysis. For now, from all of us here at Empire State Weekly, I'm John Gray.
And I'm Jamie DeLine. We'll see you here next week.
Quick reminder, you can watch Empire State Weekly all over the state. Here's a full schedule of the show on 10 TV stations across the great state of New York.